Awake? It's good to have you here again. It's been a beautiful day. It's not my picture that was on there earlier, but Dr. DeRose's name was not on there either, but he is the one presenting today. And calories in, calories out? No, that's not quite exactly what it is. If you read the flyer, you will know what he's talking about this afternoon. But I'm not going to say more. Let's bow our heads and have a word of prayer. Lord God, we have come into your presence, and we ask that you speak to us in a personal way, that we may be encouraged and go forward with your Spirit with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Have you ever argued with Jesus? I see some of you giving me nods of recognition and others of you looking perplexed. But I'm turning in my Bible to John, the 13th chapter. And many of you know the chapter very well. Jesus is approaching the cross. And the disciples haven't really learned some of the essential things Jesus was trying to teach them in those 3.5 years of ministry. And we come to John 13, you realize that this is where Jesus serves the disciples. When he comes to Peter during that foot washing ceremony, Peter objects in verse 6 of John 13, and he says, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And then Jesus says, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." You know, it's interesting as we think about this scripture, and that is, I think a lot of times in life, Jesus could say to us, "You don't realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." Well, by way of review, we talked a couple of days ago, may seem like a week ago or more if you weren't here, and that is, could we be in the midst of a great mission field and not recognize it? And then we also touched on this question, and that is, could you be uniquely equipped for ministry, but you don't even realize it? So let me answer these two questions if you don't have them already on the front of your mind, because they're very important as we look at today's topic. We shared with you data a couple days ago of the staggering rates of obesity, not only in America but in the world. We looked at over the last decade how going from green and yellow shades, we've gone to orange and red, which means rapidly increasing rates of obesity and overweight throughout the U.S. What some of you may not realize is Indiana is not in an enviable place when it comes to this topic, because Indiana is in the top quarter of states in the U.S. This is not necessarily good because it's the top quarter of those with larger body frames. And if you look, we're about 12th, depending on how you cut the rankings when it comes to the 50 states. That means that over 2/3 of the Hoosier population is made up of individuals who are either overweight or obese. So we're in the midst of as I put it a couple days ago, a mission field. Because excess weight is driving literally millions of deaths on planet Earth every year. People are suffering, they're dying, and yet, I hope you've been starting to catch a picture that we're going to fill out over the next 2 days. God has given us answers and opportunities for ministry. So here's what I'd like you to see in today's presentation. If you engage in health ministry, especially as we relate to this topic of carrying extra weight, people will be blessed. No question about it. People will be blessed in your community. And sometimes when we come into church settings, we talk about blessing people physically. We look at these metrics and we say, but what is it going to do for the kingdom of God? Well, I can guarantee you that as you're involved in health ministry, I'll just share from my own experience that people are going to be impacted for Christ and they will be drawn to his end-time church. I don't have any question about that. Now, here's what the challenge is. The challenge is we look at our outreach as a church and we say, well, we're talking about evangelistic meetings, we're talking about personal Bible studies, and it seems like there's a much straighter path from personal Bible studies to baptism, if you will, than there is from a health class to someone joining the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Let's just take some hypothetical numbers. Let's say you're very active in giving personal Bible studies, and maybe 1 in 4 of your students within a year comes into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Is that theoretically possible? Yeah, numbers like that are possible. Now, what about a health event? What is the likelihood that 1 in 4 people would come into the church after a health event? It's extremely remote. And maybe it's only 1 in 100, okay, that are ready after coming in contact with your church. The first contact is a health event. There's some of them, and there's some in our Indiana conference who've come, first encounter with Seventh-day Adventists, coming to a health ministry program. I've seen this happen here in Indiana. But it's not this straight path like we often see with Bible studies. And so some people say, well, wait a minute, then why do we even spend any time? Why do we waste our time doing health stuff? We should just be preaching the gospel. Well, let me tell you a few things, though. Something else I've observed. If you minister to someone when it comes to practical lines like health, their likelihood of their staying in the church and being connected to the church a long time seems, in my experience, to be much greater than if someone just walks off the street to an evangelistic meeting and is baptized. So there are deeper relationships, there's stronger connections. But there's an even bigger, let's just say we're using figures of 1% baptisms within a year of those who come to a health event and 25% who come through personal Bible studies. But when we talk about population data, as in science, and we call it epidemiology, there's also an important question of, we say, is what's the denominator? What's the big number you're looking at, okay? Not just the 25 out of 100. Is it 25 out of 100? How many are you impacting with the Bible studies? And what I would suggest to you, we're going to be talking about in today's meeting and tomorrow's meeting, we're going to be talking about things that can impact lots of people, could impact thousands of people in your community if you get serious about using these tools as a church. So even if it's just 1 in 100, if you touch 10,000 people, 1 in 100 is a whole lot of people, isn't it? With that background, we talked about how you begin to get involved in health ministry. Some of you are already very active. Some of you have come up to me. You've said, I'm the health ministry director of my church. I'm active in this area. But here's where the second question gets answered, if you didn't notice it in our first presentation. Could we be uniquely equipped for ministry and we're not recognizing it? A lot of things in life, we think the people who have the most success are the ones who are in the best position to share or to disseminate information. But I'd like to suggest to you, when it comes to health, some of the people best equipped to help others are those who are struggling themselves. And we talked about this a bit 2 days ago. And I encourage you not to disqualify yourself from being a witness just because you haven't arrived. And I reminded you of the story of that demoniac in Mark 5. He'd only met Jesus that day. And what was Jesus commissioning him to do? That's right, go home and tell others. Share the message. And he could rightly, at least from our perspective, he could have said, but I don't know what the message is. Okay? Well, the message was simply to share what the Lord has done for you. Now, here's the amazing thing about this. When it comes to our health journey, God can do something for you in a week. Are you aware of that? You say, well, yeah, I struggle with my weight, and I lost 5 pounds, but I need to lose 100 more or 150 more. So what can I say? You can tell what the Lord has done for you. And so what I'm saying is, some of the most valuable people we have in our communities when it comes to this area are those who are struggling themselves, and often they come to me and they say, oh, Dr. DeRose, I'd love to do something, but I have weight problems myself. That's not the way to think. The way to think is, I'm asking the Lord to help me on this journey, and if I'm struggling, I'm willing to struggle with someone else. Because there are literally thousands of people right around us that are struggling with this issue. Now, others of you are saying, but I don't have any weight issues. I've never had problems with my weight, so definitely I can't help. No, that's not the message. Because Jesus calls for all of us to come close to people. Paul put it this way in Romans 12, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. In Galatians, the same apostle wrote, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. As we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are the household of faith. So don't say, well, wait a minute, I don't want to do anything because no one from the community will come. Well, even if just the people in the household of faith were benefiting with you on this journey, it would be a blessing. So the first step is don't disqualify yourself, but then to do what? Embark on your own health journey. And I was encouraged. You guys encouraged me. Just over the last couple days, we talked about this charge we have to care for our own health, and I shared with you something that we just rolled out 2 days ago. You were the first ones on planet Earth. Well, I can't say that because the programmers and all were involved with this, but the first ones publicly to know about this new health challenge that we're calling the Summer Health Challenge 2024, and it's one of the simplest, actually I think it is the simplest health challenge I've ever tried. And it's so simple that you may underestimate its power. So all we're asking people to do is to sign up. And you don't have to get this whole website. All you've got to do is remember timelesshealinginsights.org. And you'll see the banner right there at the top of the page. You can put the full address in timelesshealinginsights.org/motivate. And if you go there, when you sign up, and 8 of you did, from this room, 8 of you signed up on Wednesday. All of you should have gotten an email already. I saw a few more of you had before today's meeting. And within 24 hours, you get an invitation to download the app. And what this app does, it allows you to choose something that you're going to track over the course of the summer. There's a bunch of things you can track, but my challenge is just track one thing. Just follow one thing, okay? So you say, I want to follow how many steps I'm getting or how much activity. You say, I've got that on my, my Apple Health device. It's monitoring everything. I got my Apple Watch or whatever you're using, okay? Google Fit. I don't even know all the apps that are out there, but many of those can directly be imported into this. And I just had someone the other day who had signed up for the app, and they sent me a question. You can actually send me questions through the app. They were tracking their sleep. And they said, how can I get some help with better sleep? And I was able to send them a link to a table that we had designed some years ago and said, here's some pointers on how to get better sleep. So in real, I'm not going to say real time, but we say it's about a 24-hour turnaround time for that as well. But you can send through the app, you can send messages. I'm the only one who's seeing your data, so you're under it's like a professional group. This is designed for physicians. It's all HIPAA compliant, and I am the coach. I guess technically I'm not your physician, but it's like a coaching team that you all become a part of if you sign up for this health challenge. Okay, you see how that works? So 8 of you figured it out, and the others of you might be figuring it out between now and then. Others of you may have figured it out already and you don't want to do it. Well, that's okay. But I'm giving you the opportunity to go on this health journey. All you need to know is the general website, timelesshealinginsights.org. By the way, I would either memorize that website, or I'd take a picture of it, or I'd write it on the back of my hand, because that's where you're going to find the free programs that I'm going to be talking about today and tomorrow. We're going to talk about other programs beside this Health Motivate app, this new app that we've been featuring, and we're going to tell you some other things that you can do to make a difference in your communities. And that brings us to step 3. So today and tomorrow we're going to look at 2 specific programs. So I'm encouraging you to start the journey to be watching something, be monitoring something. If you're already doing that and you're using something else, that's fine. But if you sign up through that link, we're part of a team going through it together. No one else is going to know what you're doing, but I'll be able to see. And I can let you know as a group, how you're doing. If we've got 50 people and I can say, hey, 25% of you are accomplishing your goals. You actually set your goals as well as what you're going to be following. So today we're going to speak about a program that we call 30 Days to Better Health. Tomorrow we're going to talk about a program called Fast 8. And both of these programs we've shown can help people lose weight, can help them gain success in this area. So 30 Days to Better Health is a daily structured approach, and we'll show you how that works. We'll give you an overview, and then I'm going to give you some specific things. If you never go to this website, if you say, I don't want any of that, I just want some practical pointers for myself, I'm going to give you those by God's grace over the next 35 minutes or so. And then tomorrow we're going to be speaking about this, the Fast 8 program. You don't need to remember the whole web address. Just remember timelesshealinginsights.org, and you'll see the different banners there, and you can click on the different programs and explore them. As physicians, we learned something called the teachable moment. The teachable moment. What this means is I can have a patient who I've been seeing for 10 years or 15 years. I mean, some doctors have been in the same practice for decades, and they say, I've been talking with this patient, talking with them, but I just can't get through. And then one day they say something. Again, they've been sharing this for 30 years. And the patient says, Doctor, why didn't you ever tell me that before? Well, what's going on? For some reason, something has changed in their life, and there's a teachable moment, okay? Now, when it comes to this challenge of weight loss, we observed last time that there's quite a stigma when it comes to weight. And if you just walked up to your neighbor and say, listen, it looks like you could benefit from our weight loss program, that may not be perceived, okay, in the best light. So what you can tell people about 30 Days to Better Health is this program is especially designed for high blood pressure and diabetes. And if you're going through the program or you're offering it in your community, we actually have business cards that you can print out. We have flyers that you can put in your church bulletin. You can invite people, and you can say, you could put out YouTube ads or Facebook ads, and you could say, we're running this program or we're sponsoring this program in our community, and if you know of anyone with high blood pressure or diabetes, you should invite them to come. You just tell that to someone. Say, and give them the flyer. Do you know what percentage of people in our communities have either high blood pressure or diabetes? Let's say, give me a figure for the average 60-year-old in Indiana. What percentage of them, just say high blood pressure alone? Well, here's the answer. Here in the U.S., roughly, once we get into our 60s, our age is roughly the percentage of the population that has high blood pressure. So what percentage of 60-year-olds? About 60%. What about 70-year-olds? Yeah, okay. And diabetes is somewhat similar, lags a bit behind that, but the point is we're talking about something where if you're offering something for high blood pressure and diabetes, you're going to touch a large percentage of your community. So this is the program. It's called 30 Days to Better Health. If you sign up for this program, there's ways that you can do it as a church. We've done it in Fort Wayne. You can support that. We have free materials that you can use in your church on a weekly basis, to handouts and other things that can go along with this. But on its simplest level, someone just signs up for this program, and every day they get a link to a short video. They average just under 6 minutes long, and we'll walk them through a fairly comprehensive lifestyle program in 30 days. Now you say, well, what kind of things do we cover? Well, before we do that, you might be asking, well, the title is about more than calories in versus calories out, and we're going to see that as we look at a number of specific examples from this program that will also carry over into tomorrow's program. So if you think about it this way, well, let me ask you this question. Let's say a person has neurologic problems in their family, they have cancer in their family, they have diabetes in the family, and they've even got heart disease in the family. How many of you think one of the most difficult things they have to decide is whether they want to be on the Alzheimer's prevention program, cancer prevention program, heart disease prevention program, or diabetes prevention program? You think that's the biggest decision they're going to have to wrestle with? Now, I see some of you shaking your heads no. That the beauty is the same lifestyle tends to prevent all the chronic diseases. Now, there are certain nuances that we may want to fine-tune for one disease or another, but you don't have to say, oh no, what am I going to do? Do I need to, am I more concerned about the diabetes or the Alzheimer's or the Parkinson's disease? No, it's largely the same lifestyle. So when we talk about high blood pressure and diabetes, those same principles are going to help in the area of weight reduction. So one of the unifying factors, one of you pulled me aside before the meeting. Maybe you didn't pull me aside. Maybe I was just standing in front of you. And you said, Dr. DeRose, I've read your book 3 times. And I, of course, asked you what book you'd read. And you said it was The Methuselah Factor. Some of you have seen that book. That book is all about how when we optimize our blood fluidity, all kinds of good things happen, from physical performance to brain health to helping us trim down. Let's take a look at that. This is research. We actually shared this in the book. So for some of you, it's review, especially if you've read the book 3 times. And these researchers studied over 13,000 individuals, and here's what they found. If you looked at things that indicated how fluid their blood was, the yellow bars indicate less fluid, so higher numbers for fibrinogen. That's a clotting protein. It makes your blood thicker. Higher white blood cell counts. That may sound good, but it's not. It makes your blood thicker. It doesn't flow as smoothly. You can see some other clotting factors there. The higher those levels, the less fluid the blood. And what this is graphing is your risk of gaining a lot of weight over the course of just a few years. And what the researchers found is if you have poor blood fluidity, it's predisposing you to weight gain. By the same token, if you want to lose weight, what do you think you want to do? That's right, improve your blood fluidity. And we could put up, some fairly technical graphs like this. But basically, the bottom line is that if the blood is not flowing smoothly, your tissues aren't getting optimal oxygenation. They're not getting optimal oxygenation. They're not burning calories as efficiently, and you tend to gain weight. Okay, so let's talk about what we can do, some specific things that we can do to improve our blood fluidity. And we're going to go through a whole list here of things, and we'll give you some pointers, some specific things that can help you with weight reduction. All of these things are covered in the 30-day program. So how many of you would like to guess which day of the 30-day program our specific challenge is to move more? Would anyone like to hazard a guess? That's amazing. Have some of you taken the program already? You're just reading the slides, is that right? Okay, well that's right. So day 3, we're going to encourage people to move more. And so what we do with each day, we give some specific challenge. And when it comes to this challenge, I'm going to help you right now, because you're going to be given a choice. If you sign up for the 30-day program and are going through that program with someone else in your community or in your church or in your family, you're going to say, well, what should I do? Well, first of all, does it matter when you exercise? Does it make any difference? Let's talk, because remember, we said it's more than calories in versus calories out. If it's just calories in versus calories out, you'd look on the chart, and it would say you burn X number of calories, 100 calories for half an hour of this exercise. So you would say, well, it doesn't matter whether I do it at 5 in the morning, at 12 noon, at 6 p.m., or at midnight. Right? I mean, if it's just calories in versus calories out, you're not talking about the calories in, we're just talking about the calories out, and you just look at a table, you'd think it doesn't matter, right? Well, is that true? Well, some of you are quite assertive. You say no. Well, why? When should you exercise? Morning, after you eat. This is an interesting study, just published a few years ago. This is a 10-month exercise intervention. So it's an experimental study done by researchers at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And they found something interesting. They looked at the time of exercise. And even if the amount of exercise is the same, those who were exercising early in the day, before noon, compared to those who were exercising later in the day, lost more weight for the same amount of activity. Okay? Now, if the only time you can exercise is after you get home from work in the afternoon, would that be of value? Yes, it's still good. But if you're trying to optimize your weight reduction and you have a choice as to when to exercise, this research suggests you'd be better off exercising when? In the morning. Now, some of you say, well, this is not surprising because you have a devotional on your shelf, if not by your bedside, called My Life Today. This is one of those Spirit of Prophecy devotionals that many of you might have. On page 136, we read this: morning exercise, in walking in the free, invigorating air of heaven, or cultivating flowers, small fruits, and vegetables, is necessary to a healthful circulation of the blood. It is the surest safeguard against colds, coughs, and 100 other diseases. So do we have this on good authority? Yeah, it's not just recent research. This has been out there. We've had access to this for a long time. Now, some people say, well, I exercise 3 days a week. Is 3 days a week good? Yes. Is 4 days a week better? Well, look at this statement, also on page 136 of My Life Today. Go out and exercise how often? Wait a minute. Let's just read this very carefully. Go what? Go out and exercise every day, even though some things indoors have to be neglected. There's more implications than just exercising, right? We should exercise where? Ideally, there's actually additional benefits if you exercise outdoors. Now, if you say, but the only thing I can do is I can get on this treadmill or elliptical or something in my home or at the health club, is that still good? Yes, it's still good, okay? But you can get additional benefit by getting outdoors and getting out early in the day. Now, does it matter how you exercise? Does it matter how you exercise? Now, years ago, I had the privilege of helping open a facility called the Lifestyle Center of America in Oklahoma. Some of you may have heard of it. And when we were there, we were very interested in this question: does it make a difference how you exercise? And some of you may have heard about the research on intermittent exercise or intermittent training. And what we did is we recruited people from our community. It was an experimental study. We actually presented the data at a number of national meetings. And what we found is if you broke up your exercise with periods of what we call active rest. So maybe you're exercising moderately, and then you'd cool down for a little bit, and then exercise moderately, then you'd cool down a little bit. We did it in a very regimented way. We had people do stress tests, and we were monitoring heart rates and things. But the idea, the simple idea is, you're actually better off to listen to your body when you're exercising. Don't say, this is kind of interesting, and I don't want to play into any gender biases here, but there tends to be one gender as opposed to another, that if we say, go out and exercise, they think that if they're going to get the most out of their time, they've got to exercise as intensely as they can for that whole time. By the way, these are men in my experience. And like me, you know, you want to get all you can packed into that exercise session, but we actually found when you intersperse the exercise with breaks, you're not just sitting down, but you're like a cool down. You're still, instead of maybe jogging or brisk walking, you're just slowly walking. They actually got more benefit when it came to weight loss. And again, it probably has to do with tissue oxygenation and getting optimal blood flow and not pushing into what we call the anaerobic area. That means if you're doing too much activity, you don't burn the calories as efficiently. So the point is, you can look at a table And if you looked at an exercise table, the ones exercising continuously you'd expect them to get more benefit, but they actually got less when it came to weight loss. So you say, what's the take-home message? How do I make this practical and not just, have you go through some, regimented program? Simply the way I would say it is listen to your body, okay? And if you're doing useful work, most people do this, right? If you're out working in your garden, doing something more vigorous, maybe you're hoeing, maybe you're raking, you're doing some lawn work, what tends to happen? If you get a little bit tired, what do? Most of you will rest. Others will say, I've only got a half an hour. I don't know. Okay, but you get the point. So there's different ways that you can do exercise that can make a difference. Now, we've been speaking a lot about exercise, and I don't want to minimize the importance of rest, of sleep, okay? Because sleeping is also very important when it comes to weight reduction. Some of you know I host a weekly radio show. It's a show that is especially themed for Native Americans. If you've never heard the show, an easy place where you can find the archives of the show? Would any of you like to guess an easy place to find the archives of my radio show? You are an insightful group. TimelessHealingInsights.org. Yes. And if you don't like me to spell it out, TimelessHealingInsights.org. Is that better? Okay? So if you go there, you can see the archives of the weekly radio show. And we've been doing it for over 20 years. I don't know that you can get all the shows there, but you can get many of them. We also have a weekly TV show that you can get there. We have a daily devotional. There's all kinds of things there for you. Now let's talk about sleeping right, because this is also very important. Some years ago on my radio show, I had a guest, and she had literally a physician who had written a book, and the title of her book was Sleep Away the Pounds. How many of you think this is sounding exciting? Now, some of my pastoral colleagues may not, want to preach on this, because then they won't be able to get, upset if their parishioners are sleeping during the sermon, right? Especially when they could say, well, but Pastor DeRose said, sleep would help me lose weight. This is a recent review, about a decade ago. And here's what they said. They were talking about what happens when we cut our sleep short. And they were talking about how it contributed to weight gain and obesity and diabetes, and why would that happen? And based on the researchers saying it has all kinds of connections. It can interfere with how insulin works. It can disrupt this microcirculation and how you burn calories. It can affect hormonal levels. It raises inflammatory compounds. By the way, these compounds that are involved with inflammation actually tend to cause us to put weight on in the middle. Are you aware of that? If someone were to give you a long prescription for prednisone, okay? Prednisone is a powerful, anti-inflammatory medication. It's like the cortisone that your body makes, or cortisol. And what happens if a person is exposed to high levels of cortisol, whether they're taking it as a pharmacologic agent, as a medication, whether they're taking it, whether their body's making it. We have some people who have a condition called Cushing's syndrome, and they're actually making excessive levels of these anti-inflammatory compounds. You say, wait a minute, inflammation, anti-inflammation? Yes, it decreases inflammation, but at the same time, what it's doing is it's causing, if you look at someone with Cushing's syndrome, they'll typically have thin arms and thin legs and a big abdomen. And they often get a bunch of fat on their back of their neck, and they get a face that's very round. That's Cushing's syndrome, okay? So there's a number of things that can happen. And by the way, when you cut yourself short on sleep, you ramp up some of those hormones as well as increasing inflammation. And it's basically what these researchers were saying, it's putting you in a position that's favoring not only diabetes and high blood pressure, but also weight gain itself. Now, one of the important things that we talk about in all of these programs is the importance of social connectedness. And one of the reasons I love to talk about it is every one of you. You don't only have a resource in yourselves because you can invite people on a journey that you're going on, but you also represent groups of people in your community. More specifically, most all of you here today are part of a body of believers. Is that safe to say? Now, maybe you're just visiting, you heard about Seventh-day Adventists, you decided to venture out of your comfort zone, and you're here today. But most of the folks I've met, you've told me, well, I'm a member of this church or that church. Every church is a healing agency in your community. And one of the reasons your churches are healing agencies is because one of the powerful agencies for healing is social connectedness. And I know you've been hearing about this in some of the other meetings, right? So this is not a surprise to you. This is a fascinating study that was published about a decade ago. And what they did is they were mapping obesity spread throughout the United States. And I know you might not be able to see this graphic all that well, but if you were to look at the graphic, what it is, it starts in the kind of the lower right-hand corner, and it goes counterclockwise. And what you see is a little red spot down around Greene County, Alabama, in the bottom. And that red spot starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's actually graphing the spread of obesity over time. And when the researchers mapped this, they said obesity is spreading like an infectious disease. And you say, well, what does that mean? And what's the significance of that? Well, the significance is, what many are suggesting, is that who you are connected to may be a greater determinant of what you weigh than even some of the things that we think are as personal choices. So where we live, who we keep company with, they are some of the most important factors when it comes to weight gain. So here's the point that I'm making. If you have a church community that's interested in health, and you may say, well, look at us, we're as heavy as anyone in our community, but you're focused on trying to make a difference and cooperating with God in implementing His health principles, then you can become an agency in your community for healing and for support, because this is extremely important. Now, we want to talk some about dietary choices, but before we do, some of you, you say, how is this really all practical? So I'm going to share a video. Some of you, if you've watched some of our things, you may have seen, if you've been through, how many of you have been through the 30 Days to Better Health? Have any of you heard about that and actually gone through it? Okay, I see maybe 5, 6 hands. In the bonus material that goes along with that, it's not in the 6-minute videos, we have a 1-hour presentation that you can show in your church. You can show any part of it, and that's if you're supporting people in your community. And we have a testimony from a woman in Indiana who actually, she was not a Seventh-day Adventist at the time, but she was attending one of our Adventist churches, and one of the church leaders shared with her about 30 Days to Better Health. And I want to share with you her testimony. It's about 6 minutes. So we're going to see if we can do that right now, and it'll give you a better idea of the program. She actually went through this 30 Days to Better Health program, and you'll hear her telling her story. So we have it right here, and we're going to see if this will cooperate with us. Beautiful pictures, aren't they? Well, maybe we'll show this another time. So we thought we had things configured so that you guys could hear it, but I think we will save that for another day if we can pull it off. So my media team will maybe help me afterward. We kind of looked at it before on short notice and thought that this looked like it would work, but I don't see anyone rushing up here saying I clicked the wrong key or anything like that. Okay, so we will segue back to our presentation. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about plant foods, even if the presenter can't spell plant. Okay, so we're talking about calories in versus calories out. And why do calories in? Why doesn't that explain the whole phenomenon? you can look at tables as to how many calories are in a food, and you're missing some very important things. One of the things we're learning a lot about right now is something called the microbiome. And perhaps many of you have heard that we have these organisms living especially in our intestinal tract. And these organisms, not only are they living organisms, but they're producing bioactive compounds. They're producing hormonal compounds. They're producing things that are actually nourishing, for example, our intestinal cells. And so we live ideally in harmony with these microbes. And if you want to have the best microbes in your body, the solution isn't just eating a bunch of probiotics or taking probiotic supplements, it's eating more plant foods. That's the way we were designed to optimize these. And some of these new satiety hormones, these drugs that are being promoted, you can actually make some of these same hormones or increase levels of these same hormones if you have better gut flora, if you have healthier germs, if you will, living in your system. And that is favored by making more plant food choices. So, if you're going through the 30-day program, you're going to find on day 4, we are going to encourage you to eat more of what specific food? Beans. Beans are literally a powerhouse food when it comes to your microbiome and to your overall metabolism. Beans have cholesterol-lowering properties. Beans have blood sugar stabilizing properties. Beans have satiety enhancing properties. So if you eat beans at a meal, you're less likely to want to snack after the meal. Are you aware of that? It actually helps to raise levels of important satiety hormones in your blood. And then on day 19, the theme for that day is Go Green. And we're talking about, in particular, eating more green, leafy vegetables. And we're going to talk tomorrow, as we talk about, the theme tomorrow will be 8 different fasts that can help with weight loss and help you to optimize your health. And we're going to talk about a specific fast that builds on this. So Go Green is encouraging people to eat more of these whole plant foods. But many of you realize that one of the foods that gets us into the most trouble is sugar. And on day 17, we encourage people to avoid hidden sugar. So let me just step back and explain to you a little bit more about how the program works, if some of you are confused. I think you're seeing that every day during the 30 days, we roll out a new focus, and you add those things to your 30-day program. So we're challenging you to be on a especially healthy program for 30 days. Now, that's not my challenge for this summer. My challenge was just for you to measure something. I was keeping the bar really low. Okay? I was just telling you, just measure something. But if you're measuring something and want to do one of these programs, that's great. Then you have something that you're tracking. But if you're going through 30 days to better health, every day we'll introduce something different, and then we'll say, continue to do that for the rest of the program. So if on day 17, we have you really paying attention to your sugar consumption, that means you got a break, right, for the first 2 weeks. We didn't ask you to watch that. And how much longer are you going to have to really keep an eye on your sugar consumption? About 2 weeks, right? At least for that program. And then you'll decide what you want to do after that. So how do we avoid added sugar? I'll tell you, it is shocking to me. Why this is so important, it's not just weight gain. When you eat more simple sugars, your triglycerides tend to go up. Triglycerides impair your blood fluidity, and that's going to make it more difficult to lose weight. It's going to affect your physical performance. Triglycerides are risk factors for heart attack and stroke. Another thing that elevates with sugar that many people don't realize, and especially problematic, is high fructose corn syrup, is something called uric acid. Uric acid is the cause of gout. Uric acid contributes to kidney stones, okay? And so if you want to lower your risk of kidney stones and gout, you want to watch your simple sugar consumption. You want to decrease it. Now, here's the crazy thing. I run into people all the time, and they say, Dr. I've even been in people's homes where they've come in, Dr. DeRose, we're making all these lifestyle changes. Look at this great thing we've got. And they bring, we've got this non-dairy ice cream. And, I'm generally very tactful, and, we'll smile and look at it. But sometimes people want to press me. And they say, isn't this a wonderful health food? And I'm looking at the ingredients since they're asking me to look at it. And sometimes it's just shocking, okay? Just shocking. Here's what we encourage people to do. If you really are serious about your sugar consumption, well, of course, you're going to want to focus more on whole plant foods. We don't get worried about the sugar content of an apple or a strawberry. But if you're looking at processed foods, I'm going to ask you on day 17 of the program that you look at the nutrition facts labels of the foods you're consuming. And I know this may not project all that well here, but what this is illustrating, we have it blown up on the side of the slide. This food has 24 grams of total carbohydrate per serving. And if you look then, it has sugar content, total sugar content of 3 grams. So if you divide the total carbohydrate by the total sugar content, you get 8. Is that good or bad? Well, if you've read the book 3 times, and that person's being very discreet, they're not wanting anyone to know who it was that did that, they could have said, that's a very good number, because we're looking for numbers bigger than 5 or larger. Now, some of you say, well, all my stuff is that way, Dr. DeRose. I haven't looked at the labels, but I only buy, organic, 100% natural, whole grain, like my granola, Dr. DeRose, that I buy in the store. Well, I'll tell you, most of these organic, healthy granolas, if you look at the label, you know what kind of figures you're likely to see? You might see 30 grams of total carbohydrate and 10 grams of sugar. They're very high in sugar, many of them, okay? So what does that mean? What do you do? Well, if you're going to follow the program, at least for 2 weeks, you'd leave off that granola. Would that be difficult? Well, you say, I could do anything for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, I'll eat all the granola. Well, hopefully you'll learn some things during those 30 days, and we're going to challenge you to do something differently afterward. But we're not going to say you have to follow every detail of the program. So we're going to expose you to a number of things, and we've had some. And if tomorrow we can play that video, it's an exciting video about the kind of success that we're seeing on that program. Day 22 prepares us for tomorrow, because day 22, the challenge is to eat fast. I try to be careful and keep the comma in there when I said it. I didn't say eat fast. I said eat fast. And we're going to talk about the importance of fasting. So fasting is incorporated in the 30 Days to Better Health, but tomorrow we're going to look at 8 fasts, 8 Bible-based fasts, and we're going to see how they can help us metabolically, how they can help us with weight reduction, and how we can use these tools. I'm going to share some important principles with you to help us and to help others on the journey to a more optimal body shape, if you will. Before I finish, the video that I had from Opal Barrett, some of you may have recognized her. Opal is now a baptized Seventh-day Adventist. I'm not saying it's just because she connected with the health message, but the point is simply this, that God wants our churches to be healing agencies. And when we go through health journeys, together, we're not only ministering to our communities, but we're deepening our own connection to one another, and it's strengthening the body of believers. So on that note, we want to wind up today. Our time is essentially slipped away from us. But tomorrow we'll expose you to the Fast 8 program, and I'm going to make time tomorrow for your questions, okay? And if you really weren't that interested in weight, and you really haven't caught the vision that it's a fertile area for ministry, and you want to ask me about something else, I will try to leave maybe even as much as half of the program for your questions, your concerns tomorrow, to try to make the week as relevant as we can for you. So on that note, let us wind up with a word of prayer. Why don't we stand as we prepare to dismiss? Father in heaven, we want to thank you that you're a God who stepped into our lives, stepped into planet Earth, and basically showed us that you sympathize with us. You're concerned about all the things that we're concerned about. And Father, we pray that you'd help us to catch sight of what seems to be the obvious, that there's people all around us suffering, they're challenged by common problems. We may be challenged ourselves as well, but instead of disqualifying ourselves, help us to see that even if we're struggling in some of these areas, you're giving us an opportunity to realize that we could do something in our churches that would bless our communities and would be a blessing to us, to our church family, and to the community as a whole. And I pray that as people step out in faith and do that, that not only would it make a difference for them, but it would make a difference for your kingdom, that people would see people coming closer to you, closer to your people, and ultimately making decisions for Jesus and for eternity. We ask it all in his name. Amen.